I'm just going to start this out in a really awkward way, because that way nothing else worse can happen. But I'm sorry, it's kind of gross, but just check that out. Sorry. I am really nervous about this. And when I first started preparing for this, I prepared for so hard because this is a big deal. This is a big deal to me. And so when I was asked to speak, I was on this kind of manic high. And I was like, yes, a TED Talk. Holy cow. Well, TEDx. Really excited. And then as time went on, I kind of do this. And as time went on, I was down here, and I ended up writing 8 different talks because I was so nervous. I don't have the procrastination monkey. I just have the panic monster just immediately set in. I wanted to start that way to kind of set the stage a little bit. Why do we have pain and suffering and grief in our lives? And what if the secret to happiness in our lives was actually pain and suffering and grief? And I know that sounds really insane. And if there was a scale of insanity from like 1 to 10, I would be like on it. Because while I was watching the other talks sitting down there, I loved the talks, and I kept trying to figure out how this dot was floating, because there's so much ADD going on. There's a black thing right there. Just so you with ADD know, that's not floating. There's a black thing right there. It just blends in real good. So all these feelings have been going on as the months have progressed, and I've been preparing 8 different talks. And I'm holding this phone because, the dot on the I, and I can't think, and they wouldn't dim the thing out there, so I have to look into people's faces, and it's a mess. And I'm a little bit worried. There's a little bit of imposter syndrome going on. I'm a little bit worried that you guys are going to boo me off the stage like that really scary lady on Princess Bride. And you think, he mentioned that I work on YouTube, and you think, oh, this guy works on YouTube. He's probably super confident. He's probably like oozing with confidence. No. This fear of failure really drives us. And recently, my son and I were competing in one of the most passive-aggressive man competitions out there, where dads spend hours and hours and hours building a little wooden block with wheels on it and racing it down a ramp. And my 2-year-old calls it the Pinewood Derby. And so last year, we were really worried about the basics. I really wanted my son to do the work. That's a big deal. I wanted to teach him. I didn't want to just be like, hey, you sit over here, I'm going to do, So I taught him how to do everything. I taught him how to sand it, and we designed it, and we used a grinder, because that's how we do things. It's for metal. I didn't even know. Anyway. So the car looked pretty good. It looked really good, actually. And I was proud of my son for making it. We get to the Pinewood Derby, and of course all the other dads are like getting crazy. And we put it on the ramp, and we send it down, and it made it down the ramp 1 time. Our average time for the Pinewood Derby was DNF. And for an 8-year-old kid, he took it pretty good, but he knows I'm kind of broken. And so we were both kind of holding back tears, really. It was hard. Well, this year rolls around, and the pressure's on, because you don't want your kid to go through that twice. Let's be honest, I didn't want to go through that twice. So this year we really studied, and we sanded, and we polished. We polished the axles. We got crazy. We did the best we could do, but we arrived at the competition, this intense competition. And ours is really kind of janky. There's like splinters hanging off of it, and there's weights sticking out everywhere. My 2-year-old, again, called this one the Golden Bum, because we painted it gold. It was actually pretty cool. And we get up there, and the other dads are they're sanding their stuff right there at the weigh-in, putting in weights and using power tools, and it's like, oh my gosh, and their kids are like, I don't even know what happened last year. I don't know. My dad did okay, I guess. And so we're terrified. To be honest, nobody likes that kind of grief. This year, we send the cars down, and ours wins. It wins. And then we send it down again, and it wins and wins and wins. It never lost. And we felt so awesome, but the only celebration my son ever gave was just this. Like a little fist pump. And it was awesome. And he saved his celebration for when we got home because he knew how it felt to have a victory dance in your face when you lose really hard. So right now, I want you to pay attention to how you are feeling. I mean, we're talking about racing a wooden block down a ramp, and you're like, yeah. That doesn't make a lot of sense. But we relate to that stuff, right? We relate to the pain that me and my son felt, my son and I, sorry. And, you know, those other kids, they lost this year, but we don't care about them because they weren't even appreciative of, right? I mean, who knows? Maybe their dads will be up here speaking next year and be like, that jerk came up here and talked. Anyway. But stories like this elicit a lot of emotion in us. It's the elements of a story. It's why we like Eddie the Eagle and, Miracle and the Jamaican bobsled team. What's that? Cool Runnings. It's why we love all these sports stories, because there's something in us that a win doesn't matter. The win really doesn't matter. But the pain and then a win really resonates with us. And so it kind of gets to somewhere deeper, doesn't it? Even hearing about a block of wood going down a ramp gets us because we've experienced deeper pain in our lives. And so my deeper pain was just failure. I mean, just like I'm nervous about failing this TED Talk. I had had so many jobs in my life. I'd been a suit salesman and failed. I'd been an insurance salesman, and whether I failed or just walked away from that because it was terrible, I don't know, but it was bad. I did a lot of stuff, and I'm not going to relate at all. So one of my favorite jobs that I ever had was I worked at a treatment center, and these kids had issues that make my little this look like Disney Channel drama, right? I really loved that, but I didn't like so much getting stabbed by those kids. And so I left that job, and it only happened once, maybe twice. But realistically, those kids are some of my favorite people ever, and we still communicate, and they're awesome. So I quit that job, and I wrote a book about it, and it got just rave reviews, this book, from my wife and the 3 other people that read it. And publishers didn't even, I couldn't even get them to open the cover. And so we had no money. And so I had to get the most stable job of all time known to man. And that job was to go back to getting stabbed and having my eyes gouged out. I got a job as a special education teacher because there's tenure and there's no competition. It's a really hard job. You're writing IEPs all day, so nobody really wants that job unless you're a really good person. I'm like, I'm a good person, right? And I'm like, maybe I just really want stability. I got this really stable job, and I worked really hard towards getting a master's degree in special education, very specific master's degree, and I got the job. We moved down here. Well, we moved to a different part of the state. I got a job. Everything was going really, really well. There was so much stability. I had insurance. It was amazing. It was I finally felt like I had something stable going on in my life. And then, right when we moved into our little modest mortgage, literally the day after, the district laid off 80 new special ed teachers. So I had failed even at something I'd worked really, really, really hard for. And man, that really, really hurt. Sorry, we can do a jump cut. I know how edits work. It's true. I mean, that's what they're going to do. They're going to jump to a different camera, and it's not going to look like I've wasted any time. It's going to be awesome. This never happened. Oh, man. And I'm so lost right now. Okay, there we go. So, all right. We're back. You can edit. Okay, go ahead. All right, so like 80 other teachers had lost their jobs. And they're all qualified, and they all have people going to bat for them because they all have principals that love them. And so I go, every interview is like Thunderdome. I mean, it's crazy, and it's so competitive. And I'm in this interview, and I just start thinking, oh my gosh, like, this is so gnarly, and these people are like the people who are conducting the interview, they're so condescending. And I was just ripped apart, and, suddenly, on this continuum, I just snapped, middle of the interview. And so I stood up and I put on my jacket, and they were like, what? And I basically just said, hey, you fired like 80 teachers that cost like 30 grand a year to pay, and if they got rid of just a couple of you middle management, but I felt really good when I walked out that day until I realized that I was still contracted and I would see these people in a meeting in like a week. That was bad. So that was my Office Space moment. And I realized, okay, I'm working like 10 hours a week on YouTube. If I start working really hard on YouTube, maybe I can make it work. And so I started working like 50, 60, 70, 80 hours a week on YouTube. It was insane. And I didn't make any more money. And it was really like a dark time in my life. We kind of went into survival mode. And the main goal was like, keep a roof over our head, keep the kids fed. And so this is kind of the dark moment, right? We didn't have a lot to eat, and so I wanted to make sure that my kids were eating. And so, when I was a special ed teacher, I had one of my students. He told me that they threw out the pizzas at 9 o'clock every night at this pizza place he worked. And so I would go and eat the pizzas. And I told my wife one time, and we kind of made a joke, but I don't think she knows how many of those pizzas I ate out of a dumpster. So that's pretty low. And so we lost everything. And we'd built up a little bit of savings from our retirement savings from working that year, and that was just about gone. And I decided to make a last-ditch effort to boost my YouTube channel. And I went on a 5,000-mile tour, West Coast Adventure Tour, and I thought that would be the most amazing thing ever. And in the end, nobody watched it. And at the time, I was so nervous about spending money that one of my friends gave me a packet of cinnamon rolls. And I lived on those cinnamon rolls for like a week. So things kind of got gnarly. But the worst part was when I finished this whole trip and I had this YouTube channel about adventure motorcycling, and then I realized during the middle of the trip, I hate this. I hate riding a motorcycle long distances. It's not so much eating cinnamon rolls for a week. It's more like I can't stand this adventure travel thing. And that's pretty heartbreaking when you realize that your dream is totally not. But I realized something different. I realized that, I couldn't be the only guy with some mental issues out there. I couldn't be the only guy that has a family and a budget and responsibility and who craves adventure but really can't get away. And so that's how I structured my YouTube channel, and now it's doing all right. But basically, all of the failures that I'd ever dealt with built me up in some way. I learned how to sell things. I learned how to interact with people. I learned how to engage. And I'm really grateful that I get to take adventures for a living. And as we learn, like I went on a motorcycle ride this morning, and it was raining, it was terrible, and there was mud everywhere, and we were getting mud in our faces, and it was brutal, and everybody loved it. And why do we love things that are so hard for us? All of our senses are based on contrast. And in a way, I kind of feel grateful for this stuff. I feel grateful that I'm depressed a lot of the time. And I know that sounds crazy, but without that, I don't think I could feel as deeply when I'm very, very happy. The next time that you fail, or that you get crushed, or that you get walked on, or somebody hurts you, or it gets real dark, and you might want to do something crazy, you might not want to live, just remember that that is your origin story. That's where you're developed. And that's the key to every single story out there, everything we want to watch. And we're addicted to it as people. We want more of it. We want, nobody goes to a movie that's like, hey, these guys won all the time. Awesome. Nobody likes that. People want to go and see losers. And they want to see losers win. So pain is the difference between a win and a victory. And and hardship is the difference between just a journey and a real, true adventure. And failure and pain, really, they're terrible. But we crave it. That's why we crave sports. That's why we do difficult things. And it makes people who have pain into heroes, right? People who spoke to you today about pain, we look at them like, yeah, you overcame that. That's awesome. You're amazing. It's so cool. Even this talk is kind of an indicator of that. It's a little bit of an underdog story. I came out here and I showed you my armpit. But you didn't boo me like the scary old lady on The Princess Bride. And it's a little bit of an underdog story, right? And when we get out here and we're ourselves and we expose our pain and our weakness, we kind of relate with each other on a deeper level because we've all experienced pain, and it doesn't matter if it's like the most crazy pain, like the worst thing that could happen to a human being, or losing a Pinewood Derby, like it's universal. We all know, I don't want to feel that way. I want to feel the win. And so, yeah, I came on stage afraid, and I let you know it, and without you knowing me, your empathy, I think, connect us. And in my head, it's imposter syndrome, all this stuff, was telling me, oh, Tyler, you can't do this. And I think in all of your heads you said, no, you got this. And I did it. So thank you.